Operating in the Courts of Heaven by Robert Henderson, Chapter 10. The Tabernacle of David. We see this in the life of David and his establishment of Zion. One of the first things David did when he came to the full rulership of Israel was to establish a place called Zion. He retrieved the Ark of the Covenant from where it had resided and brought it to Jerusalem. He set up what became known as the Tabernacle of David on Mount Zion. So they brought the Ark of the Lord and set it in its place in the midst of the tabernacle David has erected for it. Then David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. 2 Samuel 6:17. David cultivated and hosted the presence of God on Mount Zion. He established 24-hour worship there so he could effectively govern a nation from the presence of the Lord. The worship of David's tabernacle connected to the worship of heaven, allowing a flow of judicial activity from the heaven to earth. David did not rule from natural abilities, but from the supernatural abilities out of heaven. If we are to function in the courts of heaven effectively, we must become worshipers. Our worship must be connected and joined to what is happening around the throne of God. This is why Jesus said God is seeking worshipers. John 4:23-24 shows us the passion of the Father for worshipers to take their place. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. John 4:23-24. Notice that the Lord is not seeking worship, but worshipers. When we worship in spirit and truth, we qualify to function as God's governmental people. True worship enables us to step into the judicial process of heaven with great reverence, fear, awe, and honor. When we cultivate the heart of a worshiper, we will create an atmosphere in the earth that can join with heaven and see verdicts rendered out of the court system. A story that helps relate this principle concerning worship happened to me after the Lord gave me a dream. In the dream, I was shown that 9/11 occurred because of judicial activity in the courts of heaven. The principalities and powers were granted the legal right to attack America because there was no ecclesia or governmental people recognized in heaven at the time to stop it. As I awoke from the dream, I had a distant sense that if we didn't take our place in the courts of heaven, and another significant attack on American soil was coming. I called together the ecclesia. I apostolitically led and shared that, for whatever reason, we had a sign to stop the potential attack. We met as God's governmental people on 11/11/11. As we began to enter the courts of heaven, I clearly sensed that we were in for a struggle. In fact, as we began to seek to deal with any legal issue that would allow another attack, I was aware of very strong demonic resistance. I actually wanted to back away and not pursue any further, but knew I was in too deep. I was past the point of no return. As the seer prophet guests were telling me what they were seeing and sensing, I was doing my best to get in a place in the courts. As the apostle in the matter, I was responsible for administering what the seers, prophets were seeing and understanding. We are repenting of everything that was empowering the demonic hierarchy in its efforts to bring more destruction to America. Yet as we were doing this, nothing seemed to be changing. It appeared the principalities had a case and we weren't getting things arranged for God's will to be done. After quite a long period of time, I suddenly felt very strongly that we were to worship as we were in the courts with a particular song. I began to lead the song a cappella. As we worshiped with the song, I suddenly felt the atmosphere change. The seers, prophets, confirmed that we had in fact got a rendering from the courts and had stopped another attack from occurring. I knew it because of the shift in that atmosphere that took place, and the seer prophet confirmed it by what they were seeing. We had silenced the accuser and gotten a judgment of mercy from the throne of heaven over America. Mercy for America had been secured, and whatever the issue was that heaven needed us to intervene in. This happened because of our worship. Somehow our worship created an atmosphere and released testimony in the courts that granted God the judge the legal right to fulfill his Father's passion. Our worship creates atmospheres for the court to operate in, but also releases testimony into the courts that allow the Lord the legal right to implement his passion into the earth. Worship is a very powerful tool in the courts of heaven. We must be worshipers who declare his glory, kindness, passion, worthiness, and holiness. When we do, our voice as the ecclesia begins to agree with the other voices in the courts of heaven.